Donald Trump and his cultists are attempting to threaten or intimidate witnesses and members of the grand jury in the latest indictment against Trump from Fulton County, Georgia, for attempting to steal the 2020 election from Joe Biden. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, so you shouldn't be surprised. You should have known it was coming. I imagine we all predicted something like this might occur, given Donald Trump's malignant narcissism, his stupidity, his corruption, his temperament, and how those qualities have infected, unfortunately, or been exacerbated in so many of his supporters. So here's the situation. According to CNN, the names, photographs, and social media profiles, and even the home addresses purportedly belonging to members of the Fulton County grand jury that this week voted to indict Trump and 18 co-defendants are circulating on social media, with experts saying that some anonymous users are calling for violence against them. Now, I do want to point out here, because I think that I've seen on Twitter and other places, like, oh my God, how could Fulton County just forget to redact this information, or did they leak it? Neither of this is the case. So unlike federal indictments, when someone is indicted in Fulton County, Georgia, the indictment includes the names of all the grand jurors who served on the 26-member panel that handed up the charges. However, the indictment, which is a public record that's available on the court website, does not include their addresses or any other personally identifiable information. Now, why is this? Well, in Fulton County, this information is provided, this bare minimum information is provided to the public, but more importantly, the defendant's attorneys. That way, if the defendant's attorneys want to try to legally challenge the composition of the grand jury which handed down the charges, they're free to do so, right? So if they want to make a case that the grand jury was not racially diverse or politically diverse or whatever, if they want to actually make the case that the grand jury was invalid or poorly composed, right? If they want to make any sort of legal challenge against the grand jury, this is the information that enables them to do so. However, people being creepy weirdos, which is very often the case, and very often the case among the most fervent members of Cult 45, it seems that this information is being used to try to find additional information about members of the grand jury so that they can be threatened. So this creates an additional layer of risk. Daniel J. Jones, the president of Advanced Democracy, a nonprofit organization that conducts public interest investigations and monitors extremism online, told CNN. The posting of social media profiles and home addresses of people who happen to share the name of a grand juror increases their risk of harassment and other forms of harm. Because it's entirely possible. These people are going off a name, right? It's entirely possible. Number one, they shouldn't be trying to look into the actual grand jurors. Certainly, they shouldn't be attempting to threaten or intimidate the grand jurors, right? But they may not even be doing that. They may end up endangering the lives of people who weren't on the grand jury, but who happen to share the name or some characteristic of someone who did. Either of these things is wrong, but it's incredibly irresponsibly reckless as well. I mean, it's just the potential for collateral damage as well as the indefensible potential harm to the grand jurors themselves who were simply performing their civic duty, right? This is a pretty dangerous situation. So in one instance, one pro-Trump personality shared screenshots with his more than 2 million followers showing what were purportedly the social media profiles of the grand jurors. The post has since been removed, okay? So again, in this politically divisive time with right-wing violence infinitely greater, much more statistically significant than left-wing violence, number one, but number two, ever increasing, this is a dangerous thing to do. Now, the Fulton County Sheriff's Office, they issued a statement. The Fulton County Sheriff's Office is aware that personal information of members of the Fulton County Grand Jury is being shared on various platforms. As the lead agency, our investigators are working closely with local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to track down the origin of the threats in Fulton County and other jurisdictions. We take this matter very seriously and are coordinating with our law enforcement partners to respond quickly to any credible threat and to ensure the safety of those individuals who carried out their civic duty. If anyone becomes aware of a threat, please call 911 immediately or contact your local police department. So, Fulton County Sheriff's Department, they're well aware of the situation. They're leading the effort, and they said that they have partners among local, state, and federal law enforcement. So, this is also a danger to the MAGA cultists who are sharing this. They are at serious risk of losing their liberty for participating in this deranged effort to try to strike out on Trump's behalf. But it's not just MAGA supporters, folks. It's Trump himself. Trump himself. Okay, so we're talking about how Trump supporters are attempting to intimidate or threaten members of the grand jury. Well, Donald Trump himself seemed to attempt to intimidate a witness of the grand jury, a Republican lieutenant governor, former lieutenant governor of Georgia himself. So this is a clip from CNN which breaks it down.
Let me ask you about that social media post Donald Trump posted about Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, in which he said that he was reading reports that Duncan was going to testify before the grand jury, and Trump writes, quote, he shouldn't, unquote. Is that witness intimidation? Is that witness tampering, do you think?
Absolutely, yes, in my view. I don't see any gray area here. If you look at the Georgia law on witness intimidation, witness tampering, it says any attempt to influence or intimidate someone in order to try to influence their testimony or convince them not to testify. This, to me, is right down the middle. And by the way, Jeff Duncan, of course, is a colleague and friend of ours here at CNN. Even if Jeff is unintimidated, he will, I'm sure, go in there. I'm sure he's doing it right now, answering those questions straight up. The question.
And I believe it was reported he did in fact do this, because this particular clip in this particular threat from Trump, or urging of Trump, this witness tampering of Trump, where he put on Troth Central that Jeff Duncan should not comply with the grand jury, should not testify before them, which again is pretty clearly textbook witness tampering. That happened right before the indictment was handed down, okay? So Jeff Duncan, I think, has since reported that he did go in and speak to the grand jury. So he was not intimidated, but that doesn't matter because Donald Trump still attempted to do so anyway. The fact that he failed doesn't mean we give him credit for it.
Question is, what is the intent by the actor, by Donald Trump in this case? If Donald Trump had texted that exact same message to Jeff Duncan, there would be no question. And the fact that he put it out on Truth Social, to me, makes no difference. I think this is straight up witness tampering, witness intimidation.
So then, of course, the question becomes, will that be, I don't know, will the indictment be appended? Will that be added to it? We don't know. It's entirely possible. But it's also possible, again, given Trump's high profile, and this is something that we've seen with Donald Trump his entire life, and certainly for the breadth of his political career, this man is treated with kid gloves in a way that no other person would, as I imagine that many other political leaders would not, right? The fact that he is the leader of one of two major political parties, the former president of the United States, the potential future president, I imagine if you were just a mid-level political operative or some sort of state functionary or state level, if you were like an attorney general in a state being prosecutor, state secretary of state, and you did something like this, I imagine even then, in that position of relative power, you would not, the threat of you being charged for witness tampering would be very real. So I'd like to think that it's a very real possibility for Trump as well, but we'll wait and see.